Hi, my name is Lara. I'm a spiritual lifestyle coach, and it is my mission to empower you to live true to soul. So, in the last video, I talked about my dark night experience, and in this video, I'd like to talk about something that really helped me as I was going through it to give it some purpose. Because one of the things about a dark night is that it can be really confusing. A lot of the things that we've trusted are no longer. I refer to it as spiritual catabolism because what it does is it breaks down any of the structures that are no longer working for us in our life. It helps us get closer to our true self, our soul, by forcing us to let go of things that we didn't even know that we needed to let go of. So it's an intense process, and it can be extraordinarily confusing. Basically, everything that you learned and trusted will be no longer. And so it can be very disorienting, very confusing, very just really feeling like you're in the dark, which I guess is why it's called the dark night. Again, it's dark night of the soul is what it's normally referred to as. I refer to it as dark night of the ego, or just dark night, because really it is not our soul that is lost, it is our ego that is lost. And we're having to reestablish a new relationship with that part of us, that very human part of us that is programmed from the time we're very young to really keep us safe. And the problem is that the structures that our ego set up for us when we were very young to keep us safe and secure tend to hinder us as we're moving into adulthood. And later on in life, it can keep us boxed in and in this place of limiting beliefs, so that we're unable to truly break out and be the people that we want to be, experience the things that we want to experience in our lifetime. For instance, if we lacked a lot of love when we were younger, we'll come up with all sorts of protection mechanisms so that our hearts won't be hurt anymore. However, what that does, it can really force us into a very lonely existence. And so that needs to be broken down. All of those barriers, like a brick wall around the heart, brick energetic wall, needs to be broken down so that we're able to open up to love again and experience life in a whole new way. The problem is it's not an easy process. It's a necessary process so that we can live the life we want to live, and we can affect others' lives. Because we're all connected in some energetic way, and a lot of what we choose will affect others just by the way we show up. And so when we start to open our hearts and allow ourselves to love again, then that affects everybody around us, and in a positive and uplifting way. And I believe that these days especially, it's so important for us to be able to do that, because of our world. It's very divisive, it's very judgmental, it's we're pointing fingers left and right, and trying to control the way that others might show up in the world. But really, we can't do that. We can only control how we show up. And so by breaking down all of the barriers that are keeping us from love and from our true selves, that gives others the ability to do that as well. So anyway, I'm not quite sure why I went down that path, but here we are. So what I wanted to talk about is the one thing that I found that really seemed to give the dark night some purpose, and it's this map that really resonated with me, and that's the hero's journey, which I believe is a guide through the dark night of the soul. So I just want to talk about this a little bit. If I can get my screen to change, that would be awesome. There we go. So Joseph Campbell is the one who coined the term the hero's journey. Now, Joseph Campbell was mythologist who studied all the stories and myths throughout time, throughout all cultures. And he found a pattern that was in all of them. And he called that the hero's journey. And that is the pattern of adventure and personal transformation. It is a universal map of life's adventures. Now, how beautiful is this, right? He was able to make sense of all of the myths and stories, and these are all of our beloved stories. And these are just a few of the more recent movies that are built around Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. The Star Wars was specifically written based on his circle of the hero's journey. Moana is one of my absolute favorites. Harry Potter, The Matrix, Never-Ending Story, Wizard of Oz, Princess Bride. These are all most movies that you can find today follow the hero's journey. And the thing is that they follow this path because we resonate with it at a really, really deep level. It's not a conscious level necessarily, but all of the hero movies, they're all the same thing. It's tackling our inner barriers so that we can step into our personal power. And it's the journey that we take that is more important than what it actually brings us at the end. It is really about us following our heart, following what we feel is right, and then the very difficult things that we can go through as we take those steps, the internal battles. You know, when I think of Harry Potter, one of my favorites, he really had a lot of doubt. He didn't have parents, so he felt like this orphan. He felt this lack of love. He wasn't really able to step into his power until a lot later. He didn't recognize that how powerful he actually was. And so if you can look at the parallels in your life, you'll probably find a lot of them. And so it's really about stepping into being the hero of our own stories. So those characters are us, which is why we love these movies so much. So this is it's a graphic just that I took off of the internet. I don't have a reference for it. I'm not sure where this came from, but I love this one in particular because the inner circle is the terminology that Joe Campbell used, and then on the outside it explains this a little bit more. And so it begins in the ordinary world. This is where we have a limited awareness that there is even a problem. We're going about our daily life. We're doing our thing. We're going to work. We're coming home. We're making dinner. We're with the family. We're just doing our thing, and everything's fine. But then something starts to niggle at us, and that's the call to adventure. We might start to feel unfulfilled. We might start to dream about something else, think that there might be something more. There might just be this inner pull to do something different. Perhaps there was something that you always wanted to do when you were little, and it was always a dream of yours, and then you let go of the dream because you wanted to do something that was more what your family wanted you to do, or more responsible. Maybe you wanted to be an artist, but you were told that you'd never make enough money, so you gave up that dream and you went to business school instead. It could be anything. It could be big or it could be small, but it's a call to adventure. It's a call to do something different. And so there's an increased awareness with that. A lot of times what happens is for a period of time, there's a refusal of the call and reluctance to change. And I think you'll resonate with this. It's that feeling of, no, I have everything so good right now. Why would I want to mess up the apple cart, right? Why would I want to go do that? It could disrupt my family life. It could disrupt my financial situation. I don't know what that would look like. It might be a lot different than I anticipate. The grass isn't always greener. There's a million different excuses that we'll tell ourselves, and we'll push it to the back burner. We'll try not to think about it anymore. We'll just continue to go on with our life. So then what may happen, and it might not be the case for everyone, but there will be the meeting with the mentor. And in my case, what I talked about in my story is a meeting with the mentor. That was Elisa Romeo for me. And she was a spiritual teacher and a psychic medium who said, Laura, your soul wants you to quit your job. She's telling me what I already knew. She was telling me what I already knew because I had already started on my coaching certification program. I already knew. I was already struggling. This isn't aligning with me. This isn't who I truly am, and I need to do something different. And so I knew it, but I was telling myself a million reasons why I couldn't go down that path. I couldn't really make it my profession. And so what she did as my mentor is just gave me that nudge that I needed to actually take the leap of faith. And so that's when I overcame my reluctance and I crossed the threshold from the ordinary world into the special world, what Joseph Campbell calls the special world. It's the world of the unknown. I moved from comfort to no comfort because I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what it looked like after I took that leap of faith. I just knew that I was being called to take that leap of faith. And so I answered my call to adventure finally and took the leap of faith and quit my job. And so that is committing to the change. Now, after that, you move into a completely different area, which is the tests, allies, and enemies, which is what Joseph Campbell calls it. And this is experimenting with the first change. So it's funny when I go back through my journals. And so I don't know that I even mentioned this before, but I'm working on a book right now that is based off of my journal entries from that time period. And so so when this does come out, the reader will be able to see all of this for themselves. But before I even left my ex-fiance's house, and from the time I quit my job, so that was, how long? August, September. It was 3 full months, and I already was freaking out. I was still living in comfort, basically, in his house. And so it was 3 months. And already nervous, already scared. I had been applying for jobs. I had contacted the people that I had worked with, asked them if they knew of anybody in other companies. So these are the allies that were helping me along the way, and they would contact their buddies at a different company and say, hey, I know somebody who's looking for a position. I interviewed at several places, but what happened was I interviewed, but I didn't hear anything back, and they literally wouldn't return my calls, wouldn't return my emails. It was very strange, very odd. That I've never experienced anything like it. The doors were literally closed. And so perhaps, I was being tested at this point. And each time this happened, I would get more and more scared, but I was already in. There was no turning back at that point. Well, yeah, I guess I probably could have tried to go back, but I wasn't going to, because this was so big for me. This was a spiritual quest. This was following my soul. And so there really was no going back. That wasn't an option for me at this point. But that's what tends to happen after we take that first leap of faith. We'll experience synchronicities and things that lead us along a path, things that will encourage us that we did take the right path. but then we'll also it won't go the way that we expected it to go, and that will lead to questioning, perhaps regretting, looking back. We're confronted with our fears is what this is really doing. It's testing us to say, are you really, really serious? And there may be some times where we will go back, especially in relationships. This happens a lot. It's happened a lot to me in the past too. It's like, oh, what was I thinking? I'm just going to go back there because at least it felt safe. At least it felt secure. But usually what happens then when we do go back, that call to adventure is still going to be there, that niggling feeling that we need to do it, and it probably will happen again. But that's okay. It's just yet another refusal of the call, and we'll get another chance later on to do it again. So this can go on for quite a while, and then the next step is approach to the Innermost Cave. So this is preparing for a really big change. And I think for me what this was the continual breaking down, since my whole process lasted about 2 years, well, almost exactly 2 years. This Innermost Cave and the ordeal sections were prolonged for me. Preparing for the big change, attempting the big change. I was really attempting to create the new life that I wanted to. I was trying to show up the way that I wanted to show up. I was trying to let go of all of my previous programming of what it meant to be responsible, what it meant to be worthy, what it meant to have a more flexible lifestyle, really based on what I felt was going to bring me meaning and fulfillment. And so there was part of me that was grasping for stability and certainty. I wanted another job again, a day job, as I worked toward my coaching stuff over here. I wanted that paycheck with benefits more than anything at that moment, because that was what I knew. But what happened instead is that all of that was elusive. I mean, I applied for what felt like thousands of jobs, and I only had a couple of interviews. And something that I didn't mention in that previous video, I did get one job offer before I even moved out of my ex-fiance's. One job offer, and it was just a random thing that I applied for. It was for a real estate assistant job. I don't even know why I applied for that. Never done anything like it before, but I had always thought about doing real estate, so I guess I just applied. Well, I got offered that job. I interviewed and got offered that job, but I didn't take it because the pay was so low that I wouldn't even have been able to pay my rent. There was like no way. So I thought, I'm not going to sit in lack. I was going by the law of attraction that I needed to know that I was worthy of something big and amazing, and I needed to not focus on lack. So I turned it down. But literally, that was like the only job I was offered in those 2 years. So that's very interesting. And I think maybe there was a test there. I'm not sure looking back if that was something I should have done. Again, I don't have a whole lot of regrets from this time period. On my good days, I should say. Because I know what was happening. Because I've discovered this hero's journey arc, and I've seen the person that I have become, and I never could have become that person without going through this. So anyway, I digress. The approach to the Innermost Cave and the ordeal, it really was letting go of that belief that I needed this for the safety and security. What does it mean if I don't have that financial safety and security? And you gotta be honest. We're humans, and we live in this world where we have bills to pay. We have to pay for our light and electricity and our phone and our cars and insurance and all of these things. And so I was going back and forth, and I was just so confused and angry. How do I let go of that need for money to survive? It was very challenging on every level. And I really, really, really had to wrestle with that. And I think that's where that innermost cave came. That's really what I was faced with in the cave. I mean, if we're looking at the darkest parts of ourselves, it was as if I had to ask myself, who am I if I have nothing? Am I still worthy? Am I still lovable? Am I still an okay human being? And there were so many judgments that came up around that. So many judgments about what that meant. I was a single mom. I had a kid to take care of. What kind of mom takes this kind of risk, knowing how it could affect her daughter? And again, at this time, everything looked pretty good from the outside. I was living in this beautiful 3-story townhome across from this gorgeous park with a fountain, and I was less than a block from my daughter's school. And so she really didn't know any of this was going on. This was more this inner battle of mine. Who am I? Who am I now that all of this was happening to me? And that I couldn't control it. All of the things that I had relied on before. I mean, I've always been a fantastic interviewer. I knew that if I got an interview for a job, I'd get offered the job. So all of that was gone. The fact that I was in this industry that was very niche with proposal writing. Very niche. And people, there aren't that many of us. It's not something you go to college for and say, I want to be a proposal writer. I've never known anybody who did that anyway. Something you fall into and you get experience doing it and you become good at it. And those people are really really desired. And all of a sudden, there was nothing. It was so confusing. And so I was forced to go within. Who am I when nothing is working? Do I go into the victim? What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? And I did that. I did plenty of that. Especially because I was so spiritual and I followed the law of attraction. And part of my education for my coaching was based on energy leadership, the energy that's underneath the things that we do so that we can attract what we're trying to create in our life. We can create it. We purposely create it. Consciously, I knew all of these things. But what I learned was that there's way more to this than the simple law of attraction we'll talk about. And even the energy. The energy makes a lot more sense because it focuses more on a lot of the subconscious things that's going on within us. And that's the part of the stuff that I need to break down. And the thing is that we can't break down that subconscious stuff until it starts to come to the surface. And having a dark night brings those unconscious fears to the surface. Because if I wouldn't have gone through this financial hardship, those beliefs about myself and what safety and security and responsibility meant to me, those beliefs, those stories about what I told myself about how I was worthy, none of that would have come out. I wouldn't have been able to see it. No matter how much therapy or self-discovery or whatever, if we don't have something that comes along and shakes us to our core, those fears aren't going to come up. And we're going to be able to go along merrily in our ordinary world, completely oblivious. And so that's the point of this. It's fucking intense. Like the most intense thing you can go through. There were moments that There were moments where I'd be laying in the ground, crying, wailing even to the universe, to my spirit guides, to my soul, who I made this gigantic sacrifice for, in order to step into what I felt was my purpose, in order to create a more meaningful, fulfilling life so that I could do the same for others. Really, that was my whole purpose. And to feel completely abandoned by everybody, including my higher self and the universe. Talk about existential crisis. I mean, this was so intense. I felt like the insides of me were going to explode. I felt like I was dying. And I was. A part of me was dying. That part of me that had to die so I could step into my power, so that I could step into who I truly am, so I could let go of all of those lies that I learned along the way, probably picked up in past lives. Well, I know I did. A lot of this comes through in past lives as well. It's past lives, it's childhood, it's the things that we learn throughout school, throughout our relationships. Everything, all these protection mechanisms, it has to go so that we can live from a place of love. That's the purpose of it. And then that's what brings us finally to the reward, to seizing the sword. Getting the Holy Grail finally. Yeah. So for me, this really did come full circle. And the road back is the next. And this can be a long road, because what happened for me is that I ended up right back where I started. Not with the same company. Well, I did. Actually, I did contract work for the same company. And then I got a job with a different company in the same industry. The same thing that I was trying to get away from. And while the relief of having a paycheck and benefits was amazing, it also was extraordinarily disappointing and disorienting for me again. It was almost like I already was going back into another hero's journey, or I was going backwards, because what it says there is it's a rededication to change. And what happened for me was that I gave up for quite a while. As I got my health insurance, I went to the doctor and was diagnosed with melanoma. So I went through a cancer issue as well. And so here I was making this gigantic attempt for 2 years to make change in my life. And not only did I end up back where I started, I was worse off, I felt, because now I had what I felt were stress-related illnesses that I had to get through. And I had to try to make meaning of everything that I had been through. And I had to deal with the disappointment that I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And that was another very intense situation for me. And this is, I'm still wrestling with some of it, to be honest. And it's 4 years later. But when you're going back, it's not like you're going back to where you started, because I am a completely different person now than I was back then. So I'm seeing everything from fresh eyes, from a higher level of consciousness, because I learned so much about myself and who I truly am. And I know that will be a continual process for the rest of my life. But this is a great start. I've learned so much about myself. And so that leads us to the next part, the resurrection. And then returning with the elixir. I returned to the same place with so much knowledge, so much wisdom, that now I share with others. And that is the essence of the whole hero's journey. You're returning with a story. You're returning with wisdom, with knowledge, so to help others on their path. And every single one of us has a unique journey. Every single one of us learns something different throughout our journey. Every single one of us wrestles with different issues from our childhood, from the things that we've experienced throughout our lives. The purpose is to come back and share our stories so that we can guide others along their path. We can all do that for each other. There are people that do that for me. But this is the purpose of the dark night. It's not something that's there just to torture us. And these can be, it doesn't have to be a financial thing. It can be a death of a loved one. And all of a sudden we have to try to figure out how we fit in the world and what that means. It can be a loss of a job. It can be a divorce. Every time you go through a divorce, it can be an illness, a battle with cancer, or a loved one battling with cancer. Or it really can be anything. It can be big and it can be smaller, but it's anything that changes us. My whole point that I really want to drill down on is that there is a purpose for whatever you're struggling with right now. And this is it. This is the journey of all of our movies, all of our stories, all of our myths. And all we need to do is really recognize that this is normal. This is a normal part of life. It's what we're here for. We're here to learn and to grow and to experience. And so ultimately, the hero's journey pattern shows us that breaking out of the status quo and taking risks is really what we're here to do. Adventure is that natural human instinct. And by not allowing ourselves to take those leaps of faith, take the risks, opening our hearts, we're accepting monotony. We're accepting complacency. We're making the choice to not grow. Our society tells us that we should be safe and we should be secure and we should buy 42 different kinds of insurance to make sure we're safe and secure at any turn. But by doing that, we're stifling our growth. We're not allowing ourselves to become who we truly are meant to be in this lifetime. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, part of what I struggled with when I was going through this is what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's happening to me? It's normal. It should be more normal than it is. But whether we choose to take a leap of faith or the world makes that choice for us through a job loss, a divorce, something outside of us that we can't control, if we stay in one place for too long, likely we'll get pushed into a leap of faith. We'll get pushed into a new area because without it, we're not going to grow. This is a normal thing. If you're going through something like this, first of all, I'm sorry because I know how difficult it is. But just remind yourself, there's a purpose to it. You are becoming more of yourself through this experience. And as time goes on, I'll share more and more about what I learned as I went through it. So thank you so much for your time and for being here with me on this journey.